They chose my sister over me until karma hit. Before we begin the story, take a moment to support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your support means the world to our channel and helps us spread more shocking, true stories to light. Now, let's get started. I'm Ethan, 29M, and let me tell you, I grew up in a house where I might as well have been a guest in my own family. My sister, Scarlett, 26F, was the golden child, the one my parents worshipped like she was the second coming of Einstein. She was brilliant, beautiful, talented, and of course their absolute pride and joy. Me? I was just there. Scarlett had my parents wrapped around her finger from day one. Every recital, every spelling bee, every minor achievement celebrated like she just won an Olympic medal. Meanwhile, I was lucky if they remembered to pick me up from soccer practice. "Your sister needs us," they'd say. "She's going places." Our house wasn't big, but somehow Scarlett's accomplishments took up all the space. Her trophies lined every shelf. Her framed certificates decorated the walls. My Little League medals? Tossed in a junk drawer, forgotten. Family photos? She was always front and center. Me? Usually half cropped out, squinting in the background. Little things like that add up over time. And let me tell you, they really add up. The forgotten son. I was always the rough around the edges kid. The one who preferred working with my hands instead of memorizing textbooks. By the time I was 14, I was already fixing the neighbors' lawnmowers for extra cash. While Scarlett was off winning spelling bees and getting her picture in the local paper, I was covered in grease, learning how engines worked. Mom didn't care. Dad? He'd just sigh whenever he saw the grease under my fingernails like I was some kind of disappointment he had to tolerate. One time, I won first place in the school science fair. I built a working model engine from scratch, a huge deal for me. I came home, grinning, holding up my project like it was a golden ticket. I needed to hear my parents say they were proud. But you know what they said? "That's nice, Ethan. Just put it in your room. We need the table for Scarlett's sheet music." She had a violin recital. 3 weeks away. Later that week, my dad knocked over my project while moving her music stand. Didn't even apologize. Just muttered that I should have put it somewhere safer. Yeah, because I had so much dedicated space in that house, right? High school only made the gap between us wider. Scarlett was valedictorian, prom queen, student body president. The whole damn package. Me? I was just the guy who took auto shop, made decent grades, played some sports, and kept my head down. At home, the message was always the same. Why can't you be more like your sister? When I got my first job at 16, working weekends a local garage, my parents acted like I was throwing my future in the trash. "You should be studying, not getting dirty under cars," Mom said. Meanwhile, Scarlett's part-time job as a receptionist at Dad's friend's law firm, that was building valuable connections for her future. The double standard was so obvious, it was almost funny. Almost. You'll always be a disappointment. Junior year, I finally saved up enough to buy my first car, a beat-up 95 Honda Civic that barely ran. It was a mess, but I saw potential. Spent weeks fixing it up, late nights under the hood, covered in oil and sweat. When I finally got it running, I was proud. Really proud. Dad's reaction? "Couldn't you have found something less junky? What will the neighbors think?" Yeah, the same neighbors who regularly brought me their lawnmowers to fix because I was the only one who knew how. But sure, Dad, I'm the embarrassment here. Then came college, the real eye-opener. Scarlett got a full-ride scholarship to her dream school on the East Coast. My parents threw a massive party. Catering, decorations, guests. Money we definitely didn't have. They hyped her up like she was the second coming of Steve Jobs. Me? I didn't want to waste money on a degree I'd never use. I decided to go to trade school and become a mechanic. Something I actually loved. Dad's response? "At least you'll have a job. No party. No celebration. No congratulations. Just the implication that I was settling for less." But here's the thing. Trade school was the best decision of my life. I thrived there. Top of my class. Instructors using my work as examples. For once, I was a standout. Not Scarlett. Me. And my parents? Didn't care. They were too busy flying out to visit Scarlett twice a semester, sending care packages, calling her every single day. I was 20 minutes away, and I was lucky if they texted me back. One day, I made Dean's List. First semester. Huge achievement. I call home excited. Dad answered. Talked to me for maybe 30 seconds before cutting me off with, "Huh, that's great, son." Anyway, Scarlett's professor just nominated her for some freshman award. Gotta go. Click. Just like that. My accomplishment was nothing compared to Scarlett almost winning something. By the time we graduated, it was clear where I stood. Scarlett's college graduation was a full-blown family event. Grandparents flew in, aunts and uncles showed up, Dad rented a damn beach house for the weekend. My trade school graduation? They didn't even cool me. Why? Scarlett had a summer internship presentation the same day. Priorities, right? But that's when I realized something important. I didn't need their approval. I got hired right out of school at a respected garage, put in the hours, learned the business. Meanwhile, they were still fawning over every little thing Scarlett did. And that pattern? It never stopped. The golden child versus the grease monkey. Fast forward to our 20s, and nothing had changed. Scarlett landed a corporate job with a fancy title. The kind that pays like garbage, but sounds impressive. Didn't matter that she was barely scraping by. My parents bragged about her nonstop. Scarlett got another promotion. Scarlett's boss adores her. Scarlett's company is expanding internationally. Meanwhile, I was working 60-hour weeks, getting promotions and saving to open my own shop. My accomplishments? Didn't even register. That's nice, Ethan. Anyway, did you hear about Scarlett? Then Scarlett got engaged. To Harrison, a finance bro with family money. The dream catch, according to my parents. They were ecstatic. The wedding? A massive event. Extravagant venue, designer dress, live band. They nearly bankrupted themselves making it happen. Dad literally took out a second mortgage to help pay for it. Meanwhile, they were constantly hitting me up for loans to cover their basic bills, claiming they were struggling financially. I should have seen the red flags then. But you know how it is with family. You make excuses. You want to believe they're struggling. You convince yourself they wouldn't lie to you. The grease monkeys rise. Being a mechanic wasn't easy, but damn if it wasn't the best thing I ever did. I started at the bottom. Oil changes, tire rotations, basic jobs. The pay barely covered rent, but I had a plan. I worked my ass off. Stayed late, studied repair manuals, took every certification course I could afford. My hands were constantly cracked and stained. No matter how much I scrubbed, there was always grease under my nails. Some nights, I'd spend hours trying to clean them out, only to be covered in oil again by noon the next day. But the first time I diagnosed an engine problem no one else could figure out, the moment I got a dead car roaring back to life, that feeling? Pure magic. My first boss, Frank, was an old-school genius. The guy could diagnose an engine just by listening to it run. But he was a disaster at business. Customers waited weeks to get their bills. Paperwork piled up. The shop was always on the verge of closing down. I learned everything I could from him. And when he decided to retire at 70, I took the biggest risk of my life. Got a loan. Bought the shop. Renamed it Ethan's Auto. Yeah, it was cheesy, but it was mine. The first year? Brutal. 70-hour weeks, minimum. Some nights, I crashed on a cot in the office just to be back at 6 a.m. No vacations. No sick days. No margin for error. Had to rebuild the customer base since half of them bailed when Frank retired. Cold called businesses for fleet maintenance contracts. Offered discounts to first responders. Did whatever it took to keep the doors open. And when I hit a rough spot and asked my parents for a small loan to help buy a new diagnostic machine, Dad laughed in my face. You want us to invest in your little hobby shop? We're saving for Scarlett's wedding. Her wedding was months away. Apparently, more important than helping me build an actual business. I swallowed my pride, got a second loan instead. Paid it off in 8 months. But I never forgot that laugh. People like us and people like you. Scarlett came by once during my first year in business. Showed up in her brand new Lexus, looked around like she might catch a disease. This is quaint, she said, wrinkling her nose at the smell of oil and brake fluid. Like it was toxic waste. I guess it's good you found something you can do with your hands. Since, academics weren't your thing. Then she had the audacity to leave a $20 bill on my workbench. As a tip. like I was some random gas station attendant. She left, and I just stared at that crumpled bill. Not out of gratitude, but out of sheer rage. Second year in, I landed a major contract with a local delivery company. Steady work, decent pay, started building a reputation. Scarlett and Harrison came back for a favor. Her Lexus needed servicing before a road trip. I gave him a friends and family discount. Only charge for parts. Harrison was actually impressed. Asked some real questions about the business. Scarlett cut him off mid-sentence. Come on, honey. It's just cars. It's not like he's saving lives or anything important. Right in front of my employees. I kept my mouth shut. Harrison, at least, looked embarrassed. Scarlett didn't even notice. And that's just who she was. Always made sure I knew I was less than. A woman who took no BS. Then I met Grace. She was 27, a kindergarten teacher, and took zero bullshit from anyone. We clicked instantly. The first family dinner I brought her to, a disaster. Scarlett spent the whole evening bragging about her job, her house, her wedding plans. Then she turned to Grace with that fake sympathetic look and said, "Teaching must be so rewarding." I considered it, but I just couldn't imagine surviving on that salary. Grace didn't even blink. Yeah, we can't all marry rich. Mom nearly choked on her wine. Dad immediately tried to change the subject. Scarlett glared daggers. I fell in love with Grace even more that night. Every family dinner after that, a humiliation marathon. Scarlett made snide comments about my shop. "How's the little business going?" she'd ask, emphasizing little. Dad would throw in unwanted business advice, as if I hadn't doubled revenue 3 years running. Mom would immediately change the subject to Scarlett's latest promotion. At one particularly bad Thanksgiving, Scarlett brought photos of their new vacation home in Aspen. "Nate, you should see the garage. It's bigger than your whole shop." They laughed, like it was the funniest thing ever. I stood up, ready to finally tell her off. Dad jumped in immediately. "Scarlett's just teasing, son. Sit down. Don't make a scene." Always me who had to keep the peace. Never her. No space for my achievements. At some point, I just stopped sharing my wins. What was the point? When I expanded the shop to a 5-bay garage and hired 3 mechanics, I sent my parents a text, feeling proud. Scarlett's response? "Congrats on your little achievement. Harrison just acquired a company with 200 employees, but we're all proud of you too." That's Scarlett for you. Never missing a chance to minimize me. Despite it all, I still helped my parents financially. Dad's pension wasn't enough, they claimed. Their bills were piling up, they said. Meanwhile, Dad was playing golf 3 times a week, and Mom was renovating the basement. Still, every Friday, like clockwork, I sent them $600. Even during that first brutal year of business. I told myself it was my duty as a son. That maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see my worth. Biggest mistake of my life. The never-ending emergencies. The emergencies never stopped. Dad's medication needed a $1,000 loan. Property taxes? Due the same week they bought new patio furniture. Furnace broke down? Needed an emergency $800. A week later, they were at a ski resort. One year, I even skipped my own dental work so I could help them with a roof repair. Later, I found out from their neighbor, no roofers ever showed up. When I asked Dad about it, he just muttered, "We found a better solution." Never explained what that solution was. Never offered to return the money. Then came my birthday. I drove by their house and saw catering vans in the driveway. Called Mom. "Oh, we're hosting a dinner for Scarlett's promotion," she said. "We would have invited you, but it's just colleagues from her office." Guess who was there? Harrison's parents. My cousins. My uncle. But me? I got a text message. "HBD, son." That was it. The wake-up call. Grace started pointing out the pattern. "Ethan, they only call when they need money. They ignore your texts for days, but suddenly answer the moment they need something. Every crisis just happens to line up with some luxury purchase." I didn't want to believe it. They're my parents. They wouldn't lie to me. Talk about denial. Then one random Tuesday in March, my neighbor dropped a bomb on me. "Hey, Ethan, haven't seen your folks around. They enjoying that cruise with Scarlett?" I froze. "What cruise?" His smile faded. "Oh, the Caribbean one. Your sister's been posting pictures all week." Your parents look like they're having a blast in the Bahamas. The Bahamas. 3 days earlier, Mom had called me, sobbing. We can't afford Dad's medication. We don't know how we'll make it through the month. I sent them $800. Postponed buying new work boots to cover it. And now, they were sipping cocktails on a luxury cruise. With my money, I finally see the truth. I didn't call them right away. Part of me still wanted to believe there was an explanation, some reasonable excuse that wouldn't shatter what little respect I had left for them. When I got home, I pulled up Facebook. I barely used social media. Too busy working, but I had to see it. And there they were. Mom, in a brand new sundress. Dad, holding a tropical drink that probably cost more than I make in an hour. Scarlett and Harrison, smiling on the deck of a cruise ship. The timestamps matched exactly when they claimed they were too sick to answer my calls. The geotags? Bahamas. They even went shopping in Nassau with my emergency medicine money. Then I saw the comments. Scarlett had posted about how generous Harrison was for treating Mom and Dad to a well-deserved vacation. My parents responded with heart emojis, as if I had been involved, as if I hadn't just been scammed by my own family. Then I checked my banking app. The $800 I sent them, deposited hours before they boarded the ship. Memo line? Dad's medicine. I sat there, staring at my screen, feeling every ounce of love I had for them evaporate. Grace found me sitting in the dark. She didn't say I told you so, even though she'd warned me for years. She just sat beside me, letting me process it. I pulled up a spreadsheet I had been keeping, a log of all the money I had sent them over the years. Almost $40,000. Enough for a down payment on a house. Enough to start the family we'd been putting off. Enough to actually live our lives. And I had given it all away. To people who saw me as nothing but a bank account. Cutting them off for good. The next morning, I did something I had never done before. I called my shop manager and told him I'll be late. First time in 3 years of owning the place. Then I drove to my parents' house. Blocked their driveway. Rang the doorbell. Dad answered, still in his bathrobe, coffee in hand. His face went pale. Mom appeared behind him. I didn't say hello. Didn't smile. So, how was the Bahamas? I asked, my voice cold. Mom's eyes darted to Dad. Ethan, you weren't supposed to find out about that. Not an apology. Not even shame. Just annoyed they got caught. 3 days ago, you called me crying about Dad's medicine, I said. Then you went on a cruise. Before Dad could respond, Scarlett appeared in the hallway. Oh look, it's the mechanic, she sneered. What's wrong, Ethan? Jealous you weren't invited? That smirk. The same one she'd worn my whole life. We needed a real vacation, she continued. Not some cheap motel trip you'd probably suggest. Then she added, you wouldn't have fit in anyway. It was a luxury cruise. People like us, not. Well, you know. She gestured at my work boots, stained jeans like I was garbage. Dad actually nodded. She's right, son. It was more Harrison and Scarlett's crowd. You would have been uncomfortable. That was it. The moment I knew. They never saw me as their equal. Just the grease monkey. And that's when I cut them off. The moment I took my power back. I stood there, staring at the people who were supposed to be my family. Scarlett, arms crossed, smirking like this was all a joke. Mom, looking at the floor, too ashamed to meet my eyes, but not ashamed enough to apologize. Dad, still holding his damn coffee, as if this conversation was some minor inconvenience. I let the silence stretch, watching them squirm. Then I pulled out my phone, right there in front of them, opened my banking app, and canceled every single automatic payment I had set up for them. Blocked their accounts. The panic in their eyes? Real. More real than their love had ever been. Mom's voice went shrill. Ethan, what are you doing? Cutting you off. Dad's face paled. You can't just do that. We need that money. No, you wanted that money. Now, you can call Harrison for your next emergency. I'm done. Scarlett scoffed. Oh, come on, Ethan. You're being so dramatic. It's just money. I turned to her, smiling. Great. Then you can cover their bills from now on. Her face dropped. Dad started again, more desperate now. Ethan, what about my medication? Are you really going to leave your father without? I laughed. Couldn't help it. Yeah, Dad, you looked real sick in those parasailing photos. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Caught. Exposed. Scarlett, still refusing to read the room, rolled her eyes. You're so petty. This is why you'll always be nothing, Ethan. Petty and small-minded. Harrison will help them more than you ever could. I turned back to her, smirking. Good. Tell Harrison I said thanks for the bailout. The look on her face? Almost worth the $40,000 I'd wasted on them. Almost. I walked out, got in my car, and drove away free. The guilt trips begin. My phone blew up all day. Calls, texts, apologies mixed with guilt trips. Dad, we made a mistake, but you're overreacting. Mom, Ethan, how could you do this to your family? Scarlett, you're being childish and cruel. Blocked. Every single one of them. That night, Grace and I ordered takeout, sat on the couch, and talked about the future. For the first time in years, I felt light. No anxiety when my phone rang. No dread checking my bank account. No more excuses for people who had never treated me like I mattered. We started planning. A real vacation. The one we'd been putting off for years. Maybe a better house. Or maybe we'd finally start the family we'd been delaying because we couldn't afford it yet. That night, for the first time in my life, I felt free. No contact was the best decision I ever made. Cutting them off? Easiest decision I've ever made. I changed my number. Blocked them on social media. Told my employees not to pass along any messages if my family ever showed up at the shop. The first month was strange. I kept expecting the usual crisis calls. But instead, silence. And damn, it felt good. I threw myself into work. Expanded the shop. Took over the vacant space next door. Hired 2 more mechanics. Started getting contracts with high-end clients. One rich car collector became a regular, referring his equally rich friends. I even started a separate savings account. Every week, I put $600 into it, the exact amount I used to send my parents. After 4 months, that account had over $10,000. 10 grand. Gone forever if I had still been funding their bottomless pit of emergencies. Extended family started reaching out. Aunts, uncles, suddenly concerned about the rift in the family. Blocked them too. I wasn't interested in flying monkeys carrying messages back and forth. The real challenge? Deprogramming myself. Years of manipulation left a mark. Sometimes, I'd see something Dad would like on TV and have the automatic thought, I should tell him about that. Then I'd stop myself, or I'd have a good month at the shop and think, I could send them a little extra this time. No, they made their choices. I made mine. I wasn't going to be used ever again. 3 years later, the fall of the golden child. 3 years of peace passed. In that time, I expanded my shop again. 9 bays, 7 mechanics, bought a beautiful house, and had our first son, named him Jacob after my grandfather, the only family member who had ever respected me. Grace cut back to part-time teaching to be home with him more. We could afford it now. We had savings, investments. Life was perfect. Then, out of nowhere, they showed up, Mom and Dad, standing in my shop's waiting area, looking haggard and desperate. Mom's eyes were puffy. Dad looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. I nodded to my manager to take over. Led up my office. Didn't offer them a seat. They stood awkwardly in front of my desk while I leaned back in my chair. Then came the bombshell. Scarlett? Harrison caught her cheating. He divorced her. Cut her off completely. She lost everything. The house. The cars. Her perfect little life. Gone. She had moved back home. And my parents? They were struggling. Mortgage 3 months behind. Utilities about to be shut off. Dad, voice cracking, finally admitted, we need help. I just sat there, silent, letting them feel every second of discomfort. Then I leaned forward. So let me get this straight. The daughter you always preferred? The one who looked down on me for being a mechanic? The one who bragged about her rich husband? She's broke and homeless. And now you want me to bail you out? Mom's voice wobbled. Ethan, she's your sister. I laughed in their faces. Scarlett? The same sister who called me a grease monkey. The one who said I'd never amount to anything. She can go to hell. And so can you. Dad tried one last trick. We're family, son. We're all you have. I shook my head. No, I have Grace. I have friends. I have a son who will grow up knowing his worth. I opened the door. Now get the hell out of my garage. And I never saw them again. The final goodbye. Mom grabbed my arm as I stood by the door, her fingers trembling. Ethan, please. We have nowhere else to turn. I yanked my arm free. That sounds like a you problem. Her face crumpled. Real tears this time. But I didn't care. Not anymore. Maybe Scarlett can get a job, I said. I hear Walmart's hiring. Dad's mouth fell open. Like he couldn't believe the words coming out of my mouth. Like they had never once considered that I might actually say no. They had never imagined that their backup ATM might run out of cash. I could see it the moment it hit them. They had nothing left to offer me. No approval. No love. Because in truth, they had never given me those things to begin with. I nodded toward the door. Go. They stumbled out of my office, shell-shocked. Mom broke down sobbing in the parking lot. Dad just stood there, staring at the ground like a broken man. I watched them leave. And you know what? I felt nothing. No guilt. No second thoughts. No urge to chase after them. To say, fine, I'll help one last time. That part of me, dead and buried. Karma comes full circle. A week later, Grace and I boarded a flight to Hawaii. Our first real vacation. We snorkeled with sea turtles. Ate sunset dinners by the ocean. Grace was so happy she posted pictures every day. And just to twist the knife a little deeper, she made sure to tag my parents and Scarlett in all of them. When I saw what she was doing, I shook my head. You're so petty. She just grinned. It's satisfying. And honestly, yeah, it was. Life without them is better than I ever imagined. 3 years later, my life is better than ever. My shop is thriving. 9 bays, 7 mechanics, and a 6-figure income. We live in a beautiful home. Grace and I have 2 kids now. Jacob, who's obsessed with cars, and Lily, who has me wrapped around her tiny little finger. Mom and Dad lost the house. Turns out without my money, their lifestyle wasn't sustainable. Scarlett? Still unemployed. Guess those valuable connections at her big, fancy job didn't mean much in the end. No one in the family talks to me anymore. And you know what? I sleep like a baby. Because here's the truth. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you someone who understands their worth. And my son? He will never feel like he has to earn my love. He will never believe that being used is the same as being loved. And that, more than anything else, makes every hard decision worth it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you next one.